This story takes us back to the year 2002 in Los Angeles when Creed was still a teenager, recently adopted by Mary and Creed. One night, he took advantage of Mary's belief that he was already asleep and escaped from his house to meet his friend, Damian Anderson, who was waiting for him in his car outside. Together, they drove through the city and eventually arrived at an underground boxing club where illegal fights were organized. Damian was set to participate in one of the fights that night, and while he was preparing, Adonis found a gun and some cash in his belongings. However, all of this was part of Adonis' plan as he gave the money to a man named Dave just before the fight, asking him to bet on Damian winning in the first round by KO. A young man named Tony the Duke witnessed this move, as he was also present at the event that night. The fight between Damian and his opponent Michael began, with Michael taking an early lead by landing the first few punches. Damian was forced to hold on, but it was all part of his strategy as he quickly regained his distance and knocked Michael out with a powerful hook. Later, when the friends were leaving, Damian decided to give Adonis a portion of his earnings as a gesture of their friendship. Adonis was also surprised when Damian gave him a ticket to his father's fight against Muhammad Ali and George Foreman for the championship title. Damian promised Adonis that he would someday compete in the Nationals, win gold at the Olympics, and turn professional. Before continuing their night, they stopped to buy food, but before entering, Adonis recognized a man named Lion and attacked him relentlessly. The story jumps forward 15 years to South Africa, where we see Adonis in the middle of a fight defending his championship title against Conlon in a rematch. Apparently, the remembrance has affected Adonis as Conlon is the one setting the pace of the assault, landing his punches with the same combination. Although Donnie manages to get out of the corner, he cannot counter Con Lang. Nonetheless, he maintains a smile. As the bell rings, Duke warns him that he is taking a beating, but Adonis reassures him, saying they have Conlon in check, and he will leave the ring as the owner of the belt. The fight resumes, and this time Adonis lands the first punches. Conlon responds in the same way, but when he tries for the second time, Adonis has already deciphered his movements. We see him predict Conlon's punches, giving him the opportunity to dodge and counterattack until he knocks him down. The referee begins the count, but even though Conlon tries with all his might, he cannot get up in time, giving Adonis the victory as the undisputed world heavyweight champion. Time passes, and now we find ourselves in the present in Los Angeles, where we see a retired Adonis living in his luxurious apartment with his daughter Amara, with whom he communicates using sign language due to her hearing condition. We also see his wife Bianca, who is still in the music business. On that day, Adonis is at Duke's gym, helping to train one of his boxers, the current champion named Felix Chavez, who will soon fight Victor Drago. However, Felix has a problem as he cannot beat all of his sparring partners. Adonis intervenes to ensure that his attacks are not based solely on strength but also on concentration and control. When Adonis is leaving, he gets a surprise as he discovers that his old friend Damian is there. Damian expresses that he has only come to let him know that he has returned to the city and that if he ever wants to talk, he only has to call him. At that moment, Adonis decides to invite him to lunch at the cafe where they used to meet in the past. While they chat, they discover that Damian has just finished an 18-year prison sentence. Damian reveals that he wrote several letters from prison, but upon realizing that they all arrived at Mary's house, he suspects that she was hiding them all this time. He also tells Adonis that he saw all of his fights from prison, including his fight in South Africa, and that's how he knows he used the techniques Damian taught him in honor of their old friendship. Adonis offers to help him find a job and even offers him some money, but Damian refuses, saying he already has everything arranged. He reveals that despite his age, he wants to be a boxer because he swears he's in shape and still has the technique, again in honor of their old friendship. Adonis accepts and tells him to go to Duke's gym where he will train him. Later, before going to his mother's house, Adonis remembers that night and we discover that his beating was interrupted by Lion's people, who were about to break his legs if Damian hadn't shown up with a gun. The memories are interrupted as Adonis decides to enter and reunite with his family. Here they try to convince their mother to move in with them because she recently had an ischemic attack, but Mary makes it clear that she doesn't plan to leave her home and assures them that she will be fine. The laughter ends when Adonis tells them he saw Damian again. The next day, while Damian is testing the bag, Duke rebukes Adonis because he's not sure if he should allow him to train at his gym because he's too old, but Donnie convinces him by reminding him that since no one wants to practice with Felix, they could use Damian as a sparring partner. Duke agrees, but he makes it clear to Donnie that he doesn't owe anything to Damian. With nothing more to say, Damien and Felix step into the ring. On the other hand, we see that in the middle of her class, one of Amara's classmates decides to steal her drawing and tear it up in front of her, but without giving her time to think, Amara connects a hook to her face. When his parents find out about the situation, the teacher explains to them that the bully is probably seeking attention. Adonis doesn't understand why, if Amara is the victim, she is the one being punished. But upon seeing the conversation between his wife and the teacher, he realizes that he can't do anything against the rules of society. Later, when Donnie mentions to Bianca that he wants their daughter to learn how to fight to defend herself, an argument ensues because she believes that the best way to solve problems is by expressing one's feelings. The discussion is interrupted when Damien arrives, and while they talk around the fire, Damien expresses his admiration for Adonis having a mansion and a rockstar wife and music producer. Here, Bianca reveals that she had to leave the stage because it was affecting her hearing. The atmosphere becomes tense when Damien reminds Adonis of the community center where they were both for 2 years, something he could never forget. Later, when Damien and Donnie are alone, Damien expresses his dissatisfaction with being just Felix's punching bag so far, making it clear that he wants his champion title. Adonis tells him that being a title challenger at his age is practically impossible, but when Damien reminds him that in the past, Apollo Creed took a risk by fighting an unknown like Rocky Balboa, we see Adonis begin to consider it. The next day, when Bianca wakes up, she decides to ask Donnie about that community center, as he had never mentioned it before. Adonis doesn't want to talk about it but tells her that Damien wants to fight Felix for the title. In the gym, another one of Damien and Felix's many sparring matches is taking place, and at one point, Felix goes too far and hits Damien directly in the face with a powerful blow. Damien gets angry and retaliates with a hook. The hostile environment continues to escalate until they have to be separated. But the other disturbances catch Donnie's attention, who orders him to go out and clear his mind. Duke warns Adonis that he is responsible for letting Damien into the gym full of resentment. However, Donnie insists that his friend is under control. We follow Damien to his house where we see him releasing his anger with more training while still remembering when he had gained some fame in the newspapers in his youth. Then, when Adonis finds his daughter snooping around his boxing stuff, he decides to go against his mother's wishes and proceeds to teach her how to hit the bag, emphasizing that her punches should have control and concentration more than strength. That night, Damien attends the event organized by the record label for which Bianca works, but he is not the only one as he soon notices Felix and Victor Drago at the venue. While Adonis socializes, Bianca takes the opportunity to ask Damien about his past with her husband. Then Damien tells her what happened that night when he had to save his friend from a deadly beating. Bianca wants to know more, so she asks him about the man. Damien reveals that his name is Lion but makes it clear that he can't tell her more as it's not his conversation to have. The conversation is interrupted when a man suddenly attacks Drago and not only punches him but also takes advantage of his distraction to stab his hand with a knife. The next day, although the assailant was arrested, Drago's wounds cast doubt on the fight against Felix as he will take 6 months to recover. As Felix's mother and manager demand that the fight be held so that her son can get paid, and there are no contenders in good condition at that time, Adonis decides to propose a fight against Damien, promising that all tickets and pay-per-view subscriptions will be sold as the world loves stories of underdogs, just like when Apollo Creed faced Rocky Balboa. Upon hearing this, Felix agrees, and we see that the advertising campaign for the fight begins with interviews of both boxers, where Damien can tell his story to the world. On the day of the event, we see that notable figures such as Mexican world champion El Canelo Alvarez attend the bar while Felix prepares surrounded by his entourage. Adonis visits Damien's solitary dressing room to wish him good luck. After this, Damien is the first to enter the ring with nothing flashy in his presentation. In contrast, Felix is presented by a skeleton with flares and other objects from his culture. After being announced by the presenter and receiving the referee's last words, the fight begins. Felix quickly takes control of the center of the ring to impose his rhythm, connecting the first blows. However, Damien also manages to connect some isolated hooks, but he can only stop Felix when one of his blows hits his left shoulder. Seeing that this works, he decides to continue making illegal moves, such as hugging Felix and taking advantage of the referee's poor visibility to give him a knee. The first round ends, and in Felix's corner, his mother and Duque warn him not to fall for Damien's provocations because that's where he is stronger. The second round begins, and a calm Felix takes the lead, connecting all his blows until Damian hits him in the shoulder again, weakening him and cornering him, where he hits him with his elbow. This time, the referee sees it and deducts 2 points from Damian. The third round starts with Damian taking advantage of Felix's physical condition to rain hooks on him, connecting several illegal blows to his arm and leg. After receiving so much punishment, a final hook to the face knocks out Felix. This way, Adonis, Duke, and Felix's mother watch as Damian is crowned the new heavyweight champion of the world. Damian believes his friend is happy for his achievement, but Adonis doesn't know how to react, having seen the development of the fight. As Felix is taken away, Duke blames Adonis and warns him that he is forbidden from approaching his gym, at least for the moment. That night, Mary visits Donnie because she has decided to show him the letters that Damian sent her in the past, realizing that she had been hiding them. Adonis is angry with his mother because Damian believed that he had abandoned him, but Mary explains that she did it so he could forget the trauma of his past, as she already knew who Lion was, the man he had hit. But this doesn't calm Adonis's anger because he understands that she separated him from the first person who supported him when he was in hell. Mary knows this, but warns him that Damian is deceiving him, and as proof, she gives him a photograph of Damian with his friends in prison. Upon seeing this, Adonis discovers that Victor Drago's aggressor was Damian's friend. In search of answers, Adonis goes to Damian's party, where he is protected by criminals like him. Here, Adonis reminds him that he risked a lot to give him a chance in professional boxing and makes it clear that he is expelled from the gym. Damian responds by laughing, mentioning that he doesn't need him anymore because he is the champion. The attention in the environment grows so much that in the middle of this, Damian hits him. Adonis wants to respond, but understanding that he is surrounded by armed people, he chooses to leave peacefully. The next day, when Bianca discovers his wound, she asks for explanations about his behavior and wants to know if it has to do with Lion, but Adonis gets angry with her because it's something he wants to forget. The shouting increases so much that even though she is deaf, it draws Amara's attention. Shortly after, Adonis decides to visit the self-service station where he hit Lion. While doing so, he remembers fragments of what Lion made him go through, and he also sees again how the police arrested Damian that night. Just then, Adonis receives a call and finds out that his mother has just had another ischemic attack. Once he meets with her, he kneels down to apologize for how he had treated her. Mary begins to talk to him about how the day she met him, she saw his father in him, but suddenly, Mary's perception changes as she confuses Adonis with her deceased husband Apollo and goes on to tell him that when he left her, it was Adonis who accompanied her and helped her forgive him. With these words, Mary dies. The funeral takes place the following day, and after saying goodbye to his mother for the last time, Adonis apologizes to Bianca and decides to tell her about Lion. He reveals that Lion was the father in the community where he and Damian lived, who would punish them with violent beatings when they got into trouble, which was why he hit him that night. Adonis also tells Bianca that when the police found them, he managed to escape before being arrested, leaving Damian behind, and he never had the courage to visit him in prison until he pretended that nothing had happened. Bianca makes it clear to him that he is not responsible for Damian's life and that she knows her husband is a great person who deserves everything he has, so he must forgive himself. This is when Adonis realizes that Damian will not stop, so he gets Bianca's permission to stop him by force. The next day, we see Adonis appearing on a sports program to talk about Damian. Upon seeing this, Damian decides to call in live to tell the whole world that Adonis is a fraud, a coward, and someone who abandons his family. He even tells him that Apollo Creed would be ashamed of him. These words make Adonis challenge him live to a fight for the heavyweight world championship, and we see Damian accept immediately. Before starting to train, Duke reminds Adonis about the injuries he suffered in boxing, such as the fractures of his 4th and 5th metacarpals, a kidney trauma, a torn abductor muscle, and several bruises in his history. All of this, combined with his advanced age, is working against him. However, both he and Duke decide to continue, and the training begins. Adonis is out of shape, so the training must start slowly and gradually increase in intensity. As part of his training, we see Donnie sparring with Victor Dragon, who humiliates the former champion easily due to the difference in their abilities, leaving Adonis covered in his own blood. Adonis remembers the night he escaped, leaving Damian behind, which initially fills him with pain but then motivates him to continue. This gives him the strength to get up and continue sparring, sweating every drop to improve his conditioning day by day. He recovers his speed to perform combos and evade punches while running tirelessly day and night to recover the speed and endurance in his legs. Soon, he manages to land a punch on Drago again and also regains control over his punches. Finally, he recovers the power in his legs by moving an airplane's weight. On the other hand, Damien trains in a new gym where he continues his violent attitude towards his training partners, knocking them out mercilessly. The day of the fight arrives, and we see that Adonis, who was a beloved champion, is welcomed by the crowd, cheering his name. Despite Damien's fame, he is also received with applause and respect as the champion. Damien is so confident that he even taunts Adonis by dancing in his face. After the introductions, the first round begins with Donnie sizing up Damien until Damien lands a direct punch on Donnie's shoulder. Although not powerful enough to injure him, this causes both of them to attack at close range. Damien manages to push Donnie against the ropes but fails to knock him down thanks to Adonis' reflexes. The bell rings, and in his corner, Duke orders Donnie to wear out Damien and concentrate on finding an opening in his defense, but reminds him to watch out for Damien's resistance and tricks. On Damien's side, his trainer advises him to control the power of his punches, but Damien insists on doing what he does. The second round begins with Adonis imposing his technique by dodging Damien's punches and striking him at the right moment. Seeing this, Damien responds with a combination in which one of his hooks hits Adonis' leg, allowing him to regain the advantage and push Adonis to the corner. He takes advantage of Donnie's opening to throw hooks at his kidney, but this is not enough to knock him down, and Adonis quickly fights back with several hooks until the bell rings, leaving them in the corner for a moment, looking at each other like the old friends they once were. The third round begins by showing us how boxers experience a fight in the first person, as everyone outside the ring ceases to exist for them. Adonis starts doing more damage until Damien gets angry and uses the power of his fists to corner Adonis against the ropes, which now look like bars to them. When Adonis manages to get out of there, he corners Damien in the corner and strikes him, which reminds him of the beatings they used to get from Lion. The fight continues in an incessant exchange of anger-filled blows until a crosshook brings them back to reality. Just as the bell rings on his corner, Duke tells him that he's been boxing until now, but he wants him to come out and fight like a beast. To do that, he must let go and forget the guilt and accept who he is. We move to round 12 again, and Adonis starts off strong. Damien embraces him to counterattack, pushing him against the ropes. Donnie manages to get out and feels confident, but right then Damien deceives him with a distraction and lands a powerful blow in the middle of his chest, leaving him almost breathless. The referee starts counting, but Adonis gets up on the 8th count. Once the fight resumes, Damien charges at him like a wild animal, but even though he lands several powerful blows, Donnie doesn't back down. He attacks with all he has, eventually pushing Damien against the ropes. After receiving so many blows, Damien lowers his defense, and Adonis takes advantage, hitting him with a direct blow to the face to destabilize him and then a powerful hook, knocking him down and winning the title. Adonis goes to Damien's locker room later, where he apologizes for never visiting him before. Damien reminds him that they were just kids back then and that nothing that happened in their lives was his fault. Adonis acknowledges this, but also makes it clear that it wasn't his fault either. With the grudge forgiven, Donnie leaves, telling him that if he ever wants to see him again, he knows where to find him. Finally, Adonis reunites with his family in the ring, celebrating with Amara in a father-daughter sparring match, ending the story of Creed.